A few weeks ago or a month ago or so, I put out a video about initiating the process of planting squash, right, a little bit differently. And so this video, I want to take that to a whole new step in the process and kind of look at where things are right now and what I'm doing in terms of planting this squash crop this season in 2025. So a little while ago, maybe about a month or so ago, I put out a video on planting a squash crop, a winter squash, of course I'm talking about. Specifically the cushaw squash is what I've been planting with right now. And so but I'm going about a new way of growing the squash. The last few seasons have been pretty difficult in terms of growing squash. I think it has a large part to do with I haven't been really tilling or doing too much with the soil in general, and squash seems to like really loose, airy, rich soil that for it to grow and be productive and large and healthy. So this season I changed things up a little bit, and I got the idea from Will Bonzel. I'm not doing it completely 100% how he did it in his book, but I definitely recommend you check out his book and his whole process that he had going on. He's been doing that for years, for a long time, and this is only the first time that I've been doing this. And before I started carving out those patches with a disc weeder, and before I planted the seeds, obviously, I went through that bed with a broad fork and just kind of loosened up the soil down that entire row, right? And that was to help kind of aerate deeper depths of the soil, especially for squash. And so that might help, hopefully, to allow the squash to grow a little bit more productively in the soil. Basically, that first step in the process was I had weeded out the area where I wanted to plant the squash, and I sowed an oat cover crop right in early March, early to mid-March, I believe. And this cover crop took a little bit of time to germinate, right, because it was pretty early in the season, so it's not going to germinate super fast in the colder temperatures. But it did germinate and grow, even though we had some, pretty cold nights early on. That oat cover crop did pretty well, and it really came in strong once, the weather started to warm up, and so the plants got larger and covered some more ground. Still noticed a bit of weed pressure as well throughout the season, that early part of the season. So maybe I didn't sow the oats quite dense enough, or I just have a little bit more weed pressure right now. But in any case, it wasn't really a huge deal for me. And so now, with it being early June, I am going back to that area to plant the squash. Ideally, I would have done this a couple of weeks ago, but I probably could have planted this last week. But before that, it had been pretty cooler further into the season through May pretty much, and we're still kind of having some nights that were in the 40s and in the 50s, so I kind of waited, wasn't in too much of a rush to plant these squash seeds. But now, of course, I'm planting these seeds, but I have to make space for them first, right? So I'm just kind of going in with like a circular disc weeder, and I'm just kind of carving out a little spot in the soil, kind of weeding that area in the process as well, just so I have some soil to work with. And I'm planting 3 squash seeds per section like that. So each patch that I clear out, I'm planting 3 seeds from the cushaw squash. I noticed that when I was working around with using the disc weeder, the soil had a nice, relatively loose, healthy look to it. So hopefully the squash will appreciate that and grow well. But the oat cover crop that's growing around those patches in that bed, I left to continue to grow, at least for now. Later on, or potentially soon, I may take a board and step on it to break it down and use it as a natural mulch on top of that soil as this squash begins to grow and bush out and eventually vine out. Even though this is my first time only trialing this method, one thing that I really like about it is that I'm able to get more plant growth earlier in the season on that soil. So it's not bare, and it's not kind of being wasted in that sense. Instead, it's more photosynthetically active. As the plant is photosynthesizing, it is creating the different kinds of carbon molecules, polysaccharides, all these sugars and stuff that's producing, and it's sending throughout the plant itself, right? These oat plants, but they're also sending some of these exudates out of the roots into the soil to feed some of these microbial communities, to help kind of build up this organic matter a little bit and kind of assert some semblance of balance in that soil profile. So hopefully it will be really good for the squash and kind of give it a little bit of a kickstart where the soil doesn't have to like revitalize itself as the squash is sprouting and growing, but it hopefully has done some of that already ahead of time. All in all, I'm really stoked to kind of see how this method works out and how the squash responds to this type of treatment. Just wanted to make a kind of an interesting observation here. Is earlier this season, back in the spring, I had sown an oat cover crop here, and you know, the oat plants don't seem like super robust, but once you get here, there's a huge change, right? They grow a lot larger, a lot taller, more seed production up at the top, and then it kind of, you know, peers out. But like right about here, I had another sumac tree, right, and I took that out in the winter time, and so that created a pretty big soil disturbance when I dug that out. And I think that is basically probably why this winter oat, not winter oat, but this oat crop really came up strong in this area. Maybe because of that soil disturbance, right, compared to that. Thank you so much for checking out this video on planting squash in 2025. I'm pretty excited about how the soil looks right now, and so hopefully this will be a really good substrate, really good medium to grow productive squash for this season. So thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in a future video. Take care.